Okay, this is soldering the surface mount device, surface mount technology practice board. So the tools we're going to use in here are our soldering iron, our magnifying glasses, our tweezers, our solder paste, probably our flux, some solder wick, and some very fine solder, which is not something I mentioned in the introductory video. So you will need some very fine solder. Likely. You don't have to. The solder paste is good. Something else I didn't mention that I after reading the instructions on the surface mount technology practice kit is a knife. This is just to cut some foam for the casing. Looks like it's a circuit board, the components, and then a little plastic cover on the top. So it's a pretty nice practice kit. I've got the practice kit mounted up on my board here. I'm going to go ahead and use one of my chem wipes and some 99.9% pure rubbing alcohol here, and I'm just going to clean the board. Definitely found from experiences doing welding that the cleaner the board when you involve bonding metal, the better. So I'm going to set this chem wipe on the side. I don't really want to waste the chem wipes if I don't have to. Don't feel like that is very dirty at all. I've already got my resistors and capacitors set out. Obviously there's more than that. The manual for this is very nice. Should read everything. Honestly, I did not. There is a practice area for some resistors up here in the top. I'm going to go ahead and give those a try. What's really nice is this board has the numbers of the resistors, the markings of the resistors with their values, and where they go. So all the shots from here on in will be mostly uptight on the component board while I work, to give you some idea of what I have learned from doing the other one on how to do surface mount devices. I've watched many videos, and I suggest that you watch them as well. And there are several different techniques, and I found that it's a combination of all of them that gets you a good looking board. Kind of crazy. I like my stuff looking like it was professional. So I go through quite a bit of work usually to try to make things look good. Doesn't always happen, but I do try. So. Alright, so we are zoomed in nice and tight on the circuit board. I've gotten my resistors out of the packaging. If you can see those, I'll go ahead and give it some focus on that. They are pretty darn small. And the writing on there is pretty small. So you're going to need something to help you read them, or maybe I'm just getting old. So I'm going to go ahead and peel these out. I like to use a paper plate to put them on. What that allows you to do is kind of bang the plate on the table very lightly. These are very small chips in order to get them upright. I do suggest doing this over the paper plate because if you drop them, you will never find them. So they will be gone. All right. So I don't try to straighten them out at first because I tend to hit them while I'm working, and then I end up not knocking them over, and so all the work I put into it is not useless. Okay, so there are 4 spots according to the instructions right here to use some 0 ohm resistors for practice. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to use the solder paste using my technique that I like to apply the solder paste. So if you've ever watched Krispy Kreme donuts being made, their machine comes down and kind of plops down the dough, and that's exactly how I like to do my dabs of solder paste. You can actually get away with being a little sloppy here, actually pretty sloppy, because when you hit it with the soldering iron, a lot of this goo is it's going to go away. So there's a little bit of solder in here and a little bit of flux. All right, and so we're going to do these practice spots first, and then I will go and do the 2 0-ohm resistors on the circuit board, and then we'll go through all the resistors and then all the capacitors. My plan for the Arduino or Trackwino is very similar. Gonna go ahead and do all the very small components first, and then come back and do the large. Thought being that the large ones will get in the way of doing the small ones. All right. Also need to be careful not to drop these while you're transporting them. I've already done that on the other one. I got very lucky. It ended up falling into one of these rails here. Spent a long time on the floor looking for it, knowing that I probably would never find it. And then I got frustrated and said, okay, well, I'll just carry on with soldering, and just happened to spot it. All right, so here we go. Gonna place that one in there. I like to just go ahead and do these. In order to get a good glare-free picture of what I'm doing here, I have to actually tilt the circuit board, but that's okay because the solder paste holds things in place just fine. Again, not super important to get it down perfectly right here. I'm gonna hold it in place with tweezers while we solder. You've got to hold it down. Don't think you can get away without holding it down, because the resistor will want to stand on its end, or the soldering iron will end up pulling it away with it. All right. Soldering iron is heated up. Now this is a brand new tip. I'm actually going to try a different tip, and I should show you that, and I will. Let me go ahead and get it tinned up. There we go. So you should always keep your tip tinned. Now there was a really professional guy out there, and he thinks you can get away with a chisel tip or one of these flat tips with just about everything. The pencil tips, and I tend to agree with his assessment, don't transfer enough heat. So I've moved to this. I used a chisel tip on the other one. It was good, but I didn't feel like I could always get the right amount of contact that I wanted. I'm gonna give this a try and see if it's worth it. So now's a good time to go ahead and hook up your anti-static strap. I've just got mine plugged into the ground of the wall. Oh man. We're gonna go ahead and give this a shot. Alright, so as you can see, holding it nice and straight in place. Ooh, I do not like these tweezers with this tip. Just scratched the circuit board. I'm gonna go ahead and try the flat tip ones. So like this, these are new. I was actually using a pair from my toolbox for the other one. I just got these in the mail yesterday. Maybe that's what went wrong. They weren't anti-static. Alright, so hold this in place, hold it center, go ahead and apply heat to both parts. There we go. Not a bad joint. I think I do like this tip. Time will tell. Oh, not bad. I do like this tip. Alright, so I don't need to hold it in place now that that other joint is holding it, and I'm just coming in and touching, making sure I'm touching
the resistor and the circuit board, giving it enough time for the solder paste to melt, and then getting out of there. Alright, so there you have it. I'm going to go ahead and shut down my iron. I'm going to give this a few minutes to clean, and then I'm going to show you or a few minutes to cool off, a few seconds. And then I'm going to show you how I clean this. Alright, so I'm using some 99% alcohol and a Kim wipe and the brush. The brush seems to add the amount of abrasion needed to get the solder paste up. Solder paste is actually kind of stubborn. Go ahead and put the cap back on my alcohol. It's pretty pure alcohol. It will evaporate very quickly, and that is the point of using the high concentration of pure alcohol, scientific grade, industrial grade. Alright, so hopefully you can see there we have some pretty good looking joints. You know, now that it's clean, I got the flux out of the way. On the other board, I actually came back and touched them up again in order to make them look really good. And we'll give that a go here on these practice ones, but I don't know if that's necessary or maybe just being anal, because this is a pretty good looking joint. All right. Yeah, I'm not able to make that look nicer. Probably should just leave well enough alone. Yeah. Yep, I'm gonna leave well enough alone. I do like what I got here. All right, so we've already got our 0 ohm resistors out. So we need to identify from the schematic or the PC board layout, actually, it's not a schematic, what we are going to do. So there's one right here. These are 0 ohm resistors, so they're really just jumpers. And there is one right here. So here and here are our 0 ohm resistors. And I'm going to confirm again. Better to check twice and solder once than curse and scream and yell. Alright, so blops just like a Krispy Kreme donut maker. Alright. Go ahead and place our 0 ohms resistors in place. Oh, that one's a little crooked. We confirm that they are in the correct place. Soldering irons up to temperature. And let's see, we will go ahead and use our flat tip tweezers. As we learned, the pointed tip will get us in trouble with a scratched circuit board. Got a nice fresh tin on the soldering iron. Get my resistor in place and give both pieces a little bit of heat. And that's a nice joint. And just a little bit of heat. And a little bit of heat on the other side here. A little bit more. If you notice, I did get some solder here, but it actually Then the trash didn't stick. It was riding the flux. Alright, just a little bit of heat here. Perfect. Alright, so now to identify next one. Now I did actually bring a pin out here. That's from recording my contacts on the ham. So go ahead and scratch out the components that we already did, and I'll move on to the very first resistor, which is a 56k ohm resistor and has a marking of 563. So we know it's going to be in a package by itself, and it's going to have a number 563 on it. Okay, 563. So I'll set these other ones aside. I'll double check that I do have 563 in my hand. Then I will look at the schematic and find out where we are at. So in the interest of not boring people, I am going to go ahead and finish up all the resistors and all of the capacitors. Capacitors look a whole lot like the resistors, and the soldering technique is very much the same. So when we get to the integrated circuits, I will come back and show those to you. Okay, we're back. You can see that I've gotten all the resistors, all the capacitors soldered. Pretty much it's the exact same technique on everything. If you do get this practice kit, one thing to note is that this resistor and this capacitor are all on the same pad. So I went ahead and jumped to that capacitor when I was doing this resistor. So I was fearful that the solder would run over here. Just try to make it a little easier on myself. So the next thing is diodes, integrated circuits, some big capacitors. So big capacitor like that right there. All right, so the first thing is to identify the first diode that is needed. I happen to know mine already has A6 written on it. There's just no way I would be able to read these without the magnifying glasses. I am using 2x. I found that the 3x is just too much. My eyes kind of go cuckoo with that. It's too close to my face as well. Also finding that having a pin so I can trace the arrow on this drawing and then scratch out what I've done is very useful. So these are going to be the same thing, a little plop on each pad. There are 3 pads. The integrated circuits I do a little different, and we will get to that. Alright, that in there. This is a little sloppier than I like, but it will do. Alright, soldering iron on. I think see figure 8. So I'm going to go ahead and, while the soldering iron's getting hot, I'm going to go ahead and get this big capacitor. Now the capacitors here, the big ones, are polarized. If you look, you can see the top here has a black dash on the side. That appears to be the negative side. And on our board, that is the upper connector. So It's these pads. Alright, so the black dash is going to go on the upper side on these pads. Wow. Okay, that's my first one of those. So go ahead and hit the diode over here. Get my magnifying glasses on. Get my straight tweezers. Oh, wow. Dragging that all over the place. As much as I'm tempted to solder that in, I'm going to wait and get this diode because I'm more fearful that I'll knock the diode off and never see it again. Quite difficult, this diode. Juice all over the place trying to get this thing straight. Alright, I think I'm going to try getting it organized and not touch it. It's got 3 pins that should be enough to hold it in. Alright, I got it a little tacked in. I'm going to get these other guys' pins better, and then I'll come back and clean that up. Go. That's a little off center, but it's good enough to make the connection. Alright, then we'll move on to this capacitor here. I think I can hold this capacitor with my hand. Been a little sloppy with the juice here. May have to add some back. In fact, I will. I'm not super scared about the messy on the PC board. We'll get back to that. Cleaning that up with the alcohol. All right, that is done. Boy, yeah, we didn't get it on that. I feel like that's kind of sloppy there. There we go. Better. All right. I'm not real excited about that joint, so now would be a good time to show off some solder wick correction. We can put the solder wick across here. Sometimes you really need to use, so there's some solder there. We can use that to heat this up appropriately. Boom. And you can see you just sucked it right up. We can do that. This resistor right here is very small, and the pads are actually too far apart in my opinion. So I'm not going to clean that up. I actually purposefully gooed that up. Alright. Soldering iron's back off. So we have now done this capacitor. We need to find the other transistor, or the other 3-piece thing. And that has ZC on it, and that is also on the list of possible identifiers. Oh, difficult time getting this one open. Whew. Fell out of my hand. Alright, let's locate its pad. Alright, so it's up here in the corner. We can scratch that out, scratch this out, and go ahead and put 3 little plops. 1, 2, 3. Alright, another very difficult one to solder. It's pretty well in place. I do like to try to push them flat against the circuit board. Get a nice tin on the tip. Always keep a nice tin on your tip. So for the transistors, I'm actually not holding them in place. I'm finding that difficult. Now, that's probably a bad idea. This one's moving around no matter what I do. So I think if I just get this tip in there just enough, then I can come back. All right, yeah, so the trick was to kind of tack it in, and then come back and get the other 2 legs and then get the tack. That seems like a pretty decent weld. If this was the Traquino, I'd probably clean it up a little bit with the solder wick. That's kind of important to clean your board before you go crazy trying to make the the connections look good. Sometimes when you clean them up, you find out they're better than they looked when they were dirty. Alright, so next we have LEDs that we have to do. The trick to the LEDs is making sure you get them quickly. So there's 6 in here, and I only need 3, so I'm going to try to make sure I only take out 3 out of the container here. Yep, was successful at that. So there are the 3 on the left side here. So 1, 2, 3. All right. 1, 2, 3. All right. Interesting. These are really big. Now, what's cool about these is diodes do have polarity. What's nice is that these have a picture on the schematic of how they should go, because they have 3 connectors. And if you look, they have a little extension on their legs here, so I actually put the plops wrong. So the plops should have been on this little leg, this little leg, this little leg. I'm not too worried about the mess. Again, I found that it cleans up real easy with that brush and a chem wipe. In my opinion, they've made these pads pretty big, which makes it easier to solder. But that's not realistic of what you'll find on a real circuit board. But nonetheless, this is really good experience. Alright, so in my opinion, the trick here is to be very quick with these, deliver just enough heat to get them soldered and get out of there. So I'm going to get all 3 tacked in, and then I'll come back and get their other legs. I'm using 650 degrees, 670 degrees of temperature. Seems to be about right. You know, and maybe I'll lower it for this. Maybe I'll, I don't know if, you know, even 10 or 20, 30 degrees is going to make the difference. In fact, I'm going to leave it back at 650-ish. I think that's been working well for me, and I think that will deliver enough isolated heat. This one's moved around. Alright, sufficient enough. The LEDs, I think it's more important to get them on there and get out of there. They are, I believe, plastic. Alright. Okay, so we can move on to an IC. We need to see figure 7 for the integrated circuit. So one of them has more pins than the other. It's 411 at the top that we're looking for. That's IC1. That's figure 6 in the thing here. Mount IC with pin 1 as shown on the PC board illustrated. That's interesting. I don't know if it's supposed to go. Looks like, okay, they're saying pin 1 is on the bottom right. So I tend not to use solder paste here. It's a good way to get a lot of bridging. This is actually the flux. I'm just gonna put a smidge of it across here. Ooh, that's a lot. It's okay, we'll clean it up. And I'm gonna go ahead and do this one. This is really to hold it in place and obviously to flux it out to make it take the solder better. Go ahead and smudge some of that off. All right. So IC1 is 411, 4011, and we'll go ahead and place that up here with pin 1. Pin 1 is usually, so hopefully you can see this. Go ahead and try to focus. There's a couple of hints here that this is what pin 1 is. There's a divot which indicates pin 1. Woo, dropped it, but luckily that's an IC. A whole lot easier to find. Okay, so that bar is also an indication that this is pin 1. Let me try to focus. Focus, yeah. All right, not so much focus. Okay, you can see that there's a bar, there's a divot. There's also a beveled edge on that side. So this chip is actually nice. The other chips that I was working with, they were not so kind. They just had a bar. All right. So we'll get this lined up on its pad. That looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and tack it in place. We're just going to use a bit of solder on the pin, the one pin, put it on top of it and come down on it. There we go. Now, did end up moving it. It's fine, we've only got one pin in. We're just tacking it in place. Oh, nope, didn't even get it. Alright, so we'll hold it in place and tack this now. That's better. And it helps if you just kind of pull away. Alright. Alright, so straighten my solder out here. This is pretty thin solder. It's important to do with thin solder. Clean up your tip and then just come down on it. And then come down on it. Feel like you're not getting it good, you can pull it back out. You can see those are pretty good joints. Now I'll probably come back and clean that up with solder wick, and that'll make it look really professional. You can see I didn't have to add a lot of heat. Oop, I did end up having very small pins. They shouldn't take a lot of heat. And I just got some bridging there, so that'll be a good example of showing how to clear up bridging. So my solder wick, I've used it a bit now. I kind of have this nasty chunk up here. I'm going to cut it off, but if you can see, I'm going to leave some of that solder there, because that solder helps me get it hot enough to pull in the solder I don't want. So first off, this resistor got a little more than I would like it to have. And we can go ahead and clean up our pins. And you see that solder wick really cleaned up those pins. It looks pretty good in my opinion. So we'll go ahead and do this next one. Figure 7. It's got the notch, the pin, and the pin is in the upper left corner. So this actually doesn't have a notch. It has a beveled side on the pin 1 side, and it has a dot on its corner. So the diagram's lying. Another way of telling is if you place the text upright like you can read it. I'm going to see if I can zoom in and give you, I don't know if you can see the text. There you go. But that would be pin 1 right here. That's another way of telling generally what pin 1 is. Doesn't always mean it's the case, as from what I've heard. I'm not experienced enough to definitively say that. All right. So all right. All right. Looks like after this, all we have is one capacitor and 3 LEDs. After I show this next circuit, integrated circuit, I'm going to go ahead and shut down, finish up, get some of this other stuff on, read the rest of the instructions, and then we'll be back. Clean this joint up while I have the chance. Tack this in. Ooh. I gave it a little bit of solder. That will allow me to tack it in properly. That's decent. Go ahead and tack this other side in. Alright, and then we'll just go ahead and get this. Now you can't see it, I've got my wet sponge up on my soldering iron holder. Ooh, I was able to move that circuit. Alright, tacked both sides now. Gonna have to be more careful making sure that it's tacked in properly. Get a clean weld. Got some giant bridge there though. That's painfully bad. There, easily fixed. Skills are not up to par to do this. Actually, this would be only my third IC, so probably need a little more work on them. All right, there we go. Obviously gonna have to clean that up. I think that's connected when it shouldn't be. Yeah, it should be. Okay, so that's okay. Up as well. Alright, so we'll stop there and come back. Alright, we're back. Everything's been soldered to the board. Kind of prep some of our other parts here. Cut the little squares and a little thing. Now I did start to put the button down here with the tape. I realized I hadn't cleaned up, so I pulled that off. I'm gonna get a chem wipe. I'll probably get a brand new chem wipe. They're very cheap. Might as well just use them. And the brush. And we're gonna get some alcohol on our chem wipe. The cap back on our alcohol, and go ahead and brush up here. Try to get everything nice and pretty looking. Get all this flux off. You can use the brush too to push the chem wipe into the parts. But sometimes it's nice to get the brush out and try to get it around the edges. Try to make sure that nothing's accidentally bridge gapped. That solder paste is conductive. Alright, it's actually not that easy to get off either. It won't just come off just because you put alcohol on it, you will need some agitation. Alright, not a bad looking board. Not the best work, but I'm not taking a whole lot of time with this. Alright, I think that's good enough. Alright. Well, this dry pretty good. Go ahead and put this back down. I think we can give it a dry run real quick. Actually, you know what? Let's put this where it belongs so that we're not pressing on the sticky tape. Hook up our thing here and give it a go. And we do have a working circuit board. So let's go and finish this off. Get our board. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead, drag you out so you can see me better. And we're gonna finish this off. So I don't think I need the eyes anymore. Pull the circuit board out. I wish I'd included some tape for this. Probably keep this around just to show it off. Not that anybody would really care. But I might like to look at it one day. Kind of cool. Just use these foam pads to press down on that little spacer there. You probably can't see the lights on the camera. I've got my big lights out so that you can see what I'm doing. We can turn some of these off. All right. It's kind of dim. I think you're getting it. All right. So we've successfully built the first surface mount device, and we can move on.